The hope was, until recently, that this deficit would be made up in another way from Poland, the new countries, the former communist countries of Eastern Europe. But it's a bit of a race between those two things. But I think social democratic welfarist Europe is pretty much finished, except for the British Labour Party's model. I'm a great admirer of Prime Minister Blair, who's managed not only to be an internationalist, in my view, and to fulfill Britain's internationalist responsibilities to countries we have treaties with, like Sierra Leone, Iraq and Afghanistan, so we won't let you be taken over by gangsters, or run by gangsters anymore, but has also achieved something never been seen in Britain since the Second World War, as a full employment economy and a very high rate of spending on welfare, and a huge surplus. While doing all this, it's really quite a remarkable thing. So I'm quite proud of my membership of the British Labour Party, which goes back now quite a long time. Bring it on.
In light of the recent bombings in London, how do you think Tony Blair is going to react to this? Do you think he's going to... They're asking him to remove their troops from Iraq. Do you think the bombings will strengthen his resolve, or do you think he's going to take some notice?
Excuse me. If you don't smoke, you should really take it up. Before it's too late. The lady asks me, in respect of the recent atrocities in London, whether this puts Mr. Blair in the position of having to concede to his critics about Iraq. Would that be fair?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I have to say two things about this. One, I'm completely fed up with reading about the heroism of my fellow Englishmen. I hope you've had enough of it this week too. Plucky London soldiers on, business as usual, the stoic Brits, the warm beer, the chips, those breakfasts, you know. Drink your beer before it gets cold. Is this coffee or is it tea? All that. You know, I can't stand it. I love the old country, and I'm very proud of the phlegm displayed by my friends and family, but I've had enough of it, especially about how it's so much like the Blitz. I mean, just look here for a second. Throughout the whole of the 1930s, the British stolidly and phlegmatically and stoically lined up to vote for conservatives who were trying to give away Europe to Hitler. They wanted him to do it. When Chamberlain came back from Munich and was greeted by the Queen Mother, the Queen Mum on Buckingham Palace balcony, they all flooded into the streets to applaud. They couldn't get enough of it. They wanted a quiet life. They love business as usual. Yeah, let's do that. And then when it all goes wrong, they get what they've earned for this, then what else can they do but stand still under the bombing where they can't move? It's an island, for Christ's sake. When they could run away, they did. They sent their children to the country. The rich people moved into the well-fortified hotels. You read George Orwell on what it's like under the Blitz, or Stephen Spender, his time as a fire brigade officer. Fire brigade would wait for the flames to die out and then they'd loot everything from the houses. They'd say, well, actually, we don't take children's toys, Squire, but anything else pretty much fair game. There's always something. It was a disgraceful performance. They blamed the Jews for hoarding goods and for pushing in front of queues. They panicked and trampled each other to get into the underground, which now people would trample themselves getting out of, to get away from it. It was all pretty ghastly. So enough of this romanticization of the English. Had enough of it. But at least there was one thing you could say. Nobody said, well, why don't we give them what they want, the bombers? Why don't we just surrender? Why don't we look for the root causes of their grievance? There was at least none of that bullshit. And there won't be any of that bullshit anywhere where I can raise my voice either. Say it once, hope not to have to say it again. You do not deal yourself a hand in the conduct or formation of British foreign or defence policy by putting a bomb on a bus in Tavistock Square. You do not. Final. Do I have to say it twice? No. Will I listen to anyone who says that we should? I certainly will not. I certainly will not. And nor should anyone else. And the Prime Minister will not do so. And what people ought to realise is that there is indeed a connection between this and the Iraq War. The same people did this at King's Cross and Edgware Road and Aldgate last week, who last Friday blew up 24 school children in Baghdad. Yes, of course there's a connection. We're fighting the same people. And they will rue the day. We will outlive and outkill and outfight them. They say they prefer death to life. Maybe they do. If they want to be martyrs, we're here to help. But our love, really here to help, But our love for London will outlive their hatred and their love for death, believe me.
Hear,
No
hear.
question about that.
Hear, hear.
I don't think Americans are really comfortable being with this religiosity on the whole. And my hope is that when Bush passes, I think a lot of this is going to pass. And I think we're going to go back to being the middle of the road country. We've always sort of been, more or less. We swing to the left, we swing to the right, and thankfully to this point, we come back to a middle ground. And I think we're just at a far end of one of those. What do you think?
It's been proposed by the lady that if once Bush is no longer president, the problem of religiosity will shrink back to its proper proportion. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that religious fanaticism is a problem only under Republican administrations. I know there are many people who do think this. And I know that the Democratic National Committee can always count on shaking the trees and getting an extra few million from Jewish voters by scaring them with the spectre of Pat Robertson. And I've become bored by this over the last 25 years. Pat Robertson either is or is not a problem. He's not a problem only when George Bush is president, excuse me. But I really am a secularist. I really do believe in the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. And I really am an atheist. I really think all religion is poison. I don't think, James Madison quite rightly said, there shouldn't be prayers at the opening of Congress. There shouldn't be chaplains in Congress. There shouldn't be chaplains in the armed forces. We're not going to pay for them to have chaplains in the armed forces. Why should we? Look what happened when we paid for Qurans at Guantanamo. You paid to give Qurans to Muslim religious nutcases. Are you glad you did this? No. What if they hadn't had any? They're supposed to know it by heart, for God's sake. No. It says that there may not be any establishment of religion by the government. That's what it says. And it's said in such a form that there's no wiggle room. They shouldn't say, in God we trust on the money. All of this. Mr. Clinton shouldn't have gone around every day when he was up against it in the courts with Jesse Jackson and Billy Graham, two of the greatest frauds of the contemporary scene. It was disgusting that at the service at the National Cathedral in Washington, my hometown, where we were burying our dead and the dead of New York, Billy Graham is invited to give the invocation as he would have been by any president since Truman, and said, those we have lost are now in paradise and are happy and would not come back to us even if they could. Bin Ladenism in the literal form. He knows how to get to paradise. And he knows what it's like when you get there. Obscene and disgusting thing to say. And who, I mean, unless New York has changed a lot since I was there last, not everyone who's killed there randomly dies in a state of grace. Did you know, till you read those obits in the New York Times, how many saints there were in the city? I don't believe a word of it. Now, one woman I know, the wife of a senator, walked out at that point. Only one. Quietly, she got up, so I'm not listening to any of this crap. Everyone else said, oh, how wonderful to have Billy Graham to invoke Bin Ladenism over the deaths of our brothers and sisters. No, no, no. This is moral suicide. It's conceding them half their point. We will regret it bitterly. Well, this is the occasion for just one thing only, to say the United States defends secularism in its own territory and anywhere else that it's threatened, and counts those people as its allies. Now, Mr. Bush, who you've just reprobated, may be a bloody fool when it comes to saying that Jesus is, I don't know, got him. I mean, this is what I don't understand. He gave up bourbon for Jesus. Okay, I try and always be able to see the other person's point of view. Famous for it, can't do that. But